Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for November 5th, 2013. Announcement that this meeting is being recorded. I would like to take a moment of appreciation for our brave servicemen and women serving in Afghanistan. Thank you. We are going to go into executive session at the close of our meeting to discuss acquisition of the Kenny property and any pending litigation. We've got a couple of appointments tonight. First up, we're going to, in a moment or so, we're going to talk with our town planner, Sarah Raposa, and talk about a cultural district grant application. And then at 7:30, we've got our annual budget meeting where we've got all the department heads here in the warrant committee here to discuss and kind of kick off our budget season for the town. So, and then we've got a number of action items to cover. So I think we'll probably get started first with Sarah, who's here, and to talk about a grant application. Thank you.
So thank you. So I'm here pretty much in lieu of Jean Minio, who was really the author of the grant application, but she couldn't be here, and since I was going to be here for the budget discussion anyway, now, the goal of the grant application is to perform an economic impact study on the nonprofit arts and cultural assets in Medfield. And so this would address the so-called hidden economy or hidden creative economy.
Yep.
Okay. And research like this isn't generally performed on a community of this size, but it's very typical of many Massachusetts communities that have rich cultural assets. And the Cultural District Committee is really trying to rationalize those assets in kind of an economic way. Pittsfield is the only other Massachusetts community to partake in this program. It's called the Americans for the Arts program. Yep. And the anticipated outcome is that there is significant economic impact of the cultural community here in Medfield. And trying to gain more support for the cultural district in general. And it's a kind of a unique and interesting study. The grant program is through the Massachusetts Downtown Initiative, no more than $10,000. This is valued at $8,000, but it's kind of priced in a way that may not actually reflect how the state does their funding. So Jean also wanted to have the application available for other grant programs that may be able to fund it with this particular source. They have the economies of scale for it. So we may decide to pull it actually from that. So I respectfully request that Mr. Fisher is authorized to sign that.
Sounds great. Pete, would you like to make a motion?
Sure. I would move that we authorize the chair of the Board of Selectmen to sign the grant application.
And I'll second that. I just want to congratulate you for taking the effort. I think one of the things we have to do more of is try to find outside sources to bring money in to help us tax-wise, and this is just a great step. So I certainly second that.
Good.
Pass that along to Jean.
Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Excellent. Thanks, Sarah. All right, we've got a number of action items that we can kind of cover in the next half hour or so. First up, we've got a resignation letter received from the Committee to Study Memorials, so we'd like to pass that along. Rob Gregg has submitted a letter of resignation. We'd like to accept that with regrets. And, pass that on. We've got a vote that we need to take to award a bid for a reclassification study to HRS Consulting in the amount of $15,000. And is that for personnel?
This is the personnel reclassification study that the personnel board should be conducting every 5 to 8 years. So they went on, did an RFP this summer, and this is, while not the lowest bidder, what the personnel board has voted to be the most responsible bidder.
Excellent.
I apologize, I'm just not up to date on that. Can you give me a little background what exactly they do in there?
Sure, they will interview all town employees. They will do a complete market study to determine where our salary ranges and actual pay are compared to the market to determine, are we within the range, are we within the market, or do we need an increase? They will also look at and review all of the job descriptions for the town and provide an update on all of those to make sure they're compatible with FLSA, FMLA, all of that.
Great, thanks.
And-
Yeah, it's a great price. We anticipated.
It is very good.
Actually, the lowest bid came in at 11,500, and the highest bid came in just over 45,000.
Ah,
So,
What a range.
yeah, they were a little all over the place.
yeah.
But we thought this was a very competitive bid, and we're very happy with the person that we interviewed.
Well, yeah, particularly for all that, I mean, that's a lot of work, so I think that's
Mhm.
really a terrific price.
Yeah, so they'll be meeting with the personnel board later this month, beginning of December, and then their kickoff meeting with the employees will be in January.
Okay, good. Pete, would you like to make a motion?
I would move that we award the bid for the reclassification study to HRS Consulting, in the amount of $15,000.
And I second that.
All in favor?
Yep.
Aye. Okay.
Chris, how does this tie in with the collective bargaining?
It doesn't.
It doesn't,
It doesn't. No, collective bargaining is separate. This is only non-union positions.
so it's non-union?
Yeah,
Okay.
non-union.
Okay.
Next, we're asked to vote to authorize the Assistant Town Administrator, Christine, to sign a memo of understanding for the Mass GIS aerial flyover. Estimated cost is $12,000. Any color commentary on that or anything? No.
Why not?
just-
We got a little time to fill.
There we go. Kill time. No.
This is actually really exciting. Well, for me, I don't know for everybody, but the past few years, the Capital Budget Committee has been putting away $10,000 a year to pay for a new flyover. And they recommend every 10 to 15 years, obviously you're having a change, to do the flyover. Mass GIS is offering to do it for the town for approximately $12,000. So where we paid, I think it was $65,000 to do it last time.
Wow.
And we were anticipating in the range of 40 to 50 this time.
Right.
Mass GIS got all of the towns together, and they're doing it together.
Wow, that's a
So,
really
we
good
have till
deal.
December to get the MOU. They're anticipating $12,000. There is the chance it could be slightly higher or lower depending on the final number of communities. But they
But
indicated
still.
to me that it shouldn't be much off of that 12,000.
That's terrific.
Um,
Wow.
And then what we will do is, there's currently $40,000 that the Capital Budget Committee has appropriated for this. I will go back to the Capital Budget Committee in March and ask them to reappropriate that money for a full web GIS system that will integrate with the website so that people can access the GIS from home.
Well,
Good. Excellent. Well, that's very, very good news. Pete, would you like to make a
I
motion?
would move that we approve the flyover and the memorandum of understanding as indicated.
And a second?
and I second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
Okay. Next, we have a letter from Rachel Brown. She's informing us that she is resigning from the Personnel Board, the Selectmen's Insurance Advisory Committee, and the Collective Bargaining Committee. So once again, another resignation letter that we accept with regret. She sent us a nice letter here. So,
Mr. Chairman, who appoints the personnel board? Is that us or is that?
That's a good-
It's actually the Board of Selectmen and the moderator.
Okay, and joint collaboration. Excellent, yeah, because Rachel's obviously been on the Personnel Board for
Okay.
quite a while, a long time.
She's a perfect
So
person
is
to
the
be doing it.
the four
Yes,
members vote
yes,
on that?
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Good, excellent. Next, we've got would like to take a vote to sign letters of appreciation to Brandy Erb and to Rachel Brown.
So moved.
Second?
And certainly second, yes.
All in
Correct.
favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Aye.
Superintendent Feeney is recommending the selectmen vote to award the tree bid to Hartney Graymont, actually the only bid that was received, and tree warden Ed Hinckley is satisfied with the bid results.
So moved.
And do you
I'll
have a second?
second that. Was he okay with that? We just had the one bid with Ken, or he's not happy with that?
It's the best you can do, yeah. Would like to have gotten more bids just for competitive sake, but I think they were okay with this one. I don't think they were particularly happy with the last contractor. They didn't feel that they were.
Are we just too small? Was that why we're not getting more bids? Or?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of times they can make more money working for the utilities. And we need them when there's an emergency. The utilities need them when there's an emergency, so sometimes I think they can do better with the utility. Same problem you have sometimes with snow plowing. Some of the plow trucks, they can make more money and damage their equipment less doing parking lots. So they'll go up to Framingham or Natick and do a mall parking lot, and it's easier than doing streets and driveways and whatnot, so.
All right. Licenses and permits. Memo is announcing the tree lighting ceremony. This year will be Friday, December 6th at 6:30 in Baxter Park. The holiday parade will take place on Saturday, December 7th at 1 p.m. And Memo is requesting a parade permit for the holiday parade.
I would move that we give Memo the parade permit.
Okay.
And I second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
Good. Newentown is requesting permission to establish a booth at the annual tree lighting ceremony to sell hot chocolate, baked items, etc. This is their annual fundraiser.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
Okay. And Medfield Music Association is requesting permission to place signs for 2 weeks advertising the annual Spaghetti with Santa event on Wednesday, December 11th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
Good. Church of the Advent is requesting permission to place signs announcing the Advent Holiday Bazaar on Saturday, November 23rd. The signs will be in place 2 weeks prior to the event.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
All right. And then Basil's Restaurant, Tommy McHugh, manager, is requesting a time extension on their liquor license to 1 a.m. on Thanksgiving Eve, November 27th.
So moved.
Has this happened before, I mean, 1 a.m.?
Yes, I've read articles where that's the busiest bar night of the year. I guess everybody comes home and has to face the day with the relatives, so they all want to go up and see their friend. A lot of kids are home from college.
From college and stuff like that,
and,
yeah.
People
Has
at
there
home
ever been-
visiting families.
This has happened a number of times then? This is.
Yeah,
Yes.
I remember
Yes,
seeing
every
it.
year.
Has there ever been concerns with neighbors or anything with the 1 a.m. that you've heard?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, good.
Yep.
Okay. We've got a couple of pending issues. One is talking about the Pocket Park Steering Committee. So I guess we've got some members here, it looks like on my notes here. We've got Bobby Kennedy from DPW. We've got Sarah Raposa, obviously from the Planning Board. Matt McCormick's going to join the committee from the Downtown Study Committee. Jim Snyder, Park and Rec, and a member at large, Minta Hisong. And I guess they were just talking about here that selectmen to designate a business owner and landscape designer or prefer acting chairman Gene Minio to nominate for these positions and stuff. So I didn't know how either of you folks felt about that, but I'd assume it'd leave maybe up to them unless you had any
Sure,
thoughts on
yeah.
that.
If she wants to nominate, if she has people that are interested.
Interested, I think that would be
But I think you
fun.
need to talk to the people, and so
See what they want to do. Okay.
someone needs to talk to the people.
Yeah, okay. So I think that's fine. And then we just got a note here under pending too about beaver dams. Discuss beaver dams and stuff like that. Did you? Bring that up on the
That
agenda?
wasn't
No.
mine, but-
No.
Okay, we've discussed them.
All right, that's good. All right. Well,
Well,
we'll, yeah.
well,
I don't know if that-
yes.
It's always a problem.
Well, did Daddy you come up with the folks you talked about in Indian Hill, because that was always a.
A problem, yeah, sure. And obviously it's an ongoing problem for them off of South Street there in the bottom of the
Yeah.
hill and stuff, yeah. So.
And the reason I put that on the agenda, I believe November 15th is the hunting season. It goes from November until like February or March.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do any trapping of beavers, this is the time of year that you need to do it. You can do it without an emergency permit from the Commonwealth. So if you would like, I can contact the trapper that we've used and see if he's willing to do it. I guess you need to decide which areas are priority areas, and maybe I'll ask him if he could,
Yeah.
from his experience. I know we've had trouble down on the Stop River between South Street and the Noon Hill Bridge, and also for the Noon Hill Bridge down to Causeway Street Culvert Bridge.
Although in that area, if it floods, there aren't many houses, I don't think, that get affected, are there?
No, but it does back up to the Noon Hill Bridge. You know, if they do it in between, the water eventually will back up and start undermining the Noon Hill Road. Yeah,
I have concerns with the Vine Brook area from the.
that's another problem area. Yeah,
I know I was really shocked to see the amount of trees that have been killed.
Yeah.
And I know some of the homeowners at the end of Earl Curl Way, also that abuts that property, they've had a large number of trees because of the flooding that have died. So I think that's a priority area.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
about White Street? That is notorious also by the Cronins.
Those seem to be the three biggest problem areas, yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Somebody said that there was a new problem on Pine Street. There's a small brook almost to the new developments at the very end by the Dover line. There's a small brook that has been dammed up, and they have some flooding there, but
Wow, okay.
I haven't heard
Didn't
about
see
that one, yeah.
That's right.
The problem is, it's not going to be solved. I mean, this is like putting your finger in the dike.
Yeah.
While the population keeps exploding,
Yeah.
and if nothing is done on a statewide basis, it's going to continue to get worse. And you're going to have more and more of these situations cropping up.
the
So I
season
don't know.
begins November 15th. When does it end?
I believe it's around March. I'll get the exact dates for you, but
I
it's...
think that would be good if you could
Yeah.
chat with him, see if he'd be willing to do that, and we could make arrangements with
I
him.
think he has a setup fee and then so much per beaver.
Yeah,
And, I asked why, and he said that state law, you have to check the traps every 24 hours
mm-hmm,
in case there's a beaver in them so that they won't die, although they end up dying anyway.
yeah.
So, do we have money budgeted, or
We've taken it in the past out of the selectmen's budget.
Yeah, I don't think it's been
probably
too
if it's-
bad, right? Yeah.
It hasn't, because he only got one beaver the last
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
so.
So,
He,
it's fine.
the type of traps that the Board of Health gave permission to use were, he felt, not very effective. He feels the beavers have learned to get around them.
Ah,
They are pretty good engineers.
Yep.
And there's a trap that traps them underwater that he feels is much more effective. And I think you can use that during the trapping season,
all right.
so I'll
Yeah,
make
we'll
sure on that
defer to
too.
his
so.
judgment so that we can
Yes.
try to have him be as effective as possible.
There was a ban, a leg hold trap ban that was passed. It was a citizen petition, went on the ballot, and it was approved by the voters, so you cannot use leg hold traps that I believe they feel are create more suffering on the part of the animals. And
Yeah.
Well, I just think if we can be proactive with this, so that the flooding isn't going to occur, people's
you can be,
basements are not going to be flooded, they're not going to be coming to the selectmen's meeting. If we can be proactive and take care of that, we'll be.
you can be proactive, but unless something is done statewide,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
it's going to be a continuing, ongoing problem.
No, I think it's good for us to give it a shot. I think
Yep.
it's important.
Okay.
Maybe we should even figure that.
I'll talk to, it's Barry Mandel we've been using, and check with him and see if his availability and
Yeah.
his price, and get
Yeah.
back to you on that.
No, that'd be good.
Yeah.
That'd be very good. Excellent. Next, we have Medfield State Hospital status update. Christine?
Just a couple things. Just so you're aware, there is a PIP meeting on Thursday night
Yes,
here.
Pip. Yep.
And that's at 7 o'clock, and DCAM will be presenting some of their next phase information.
Okay.
I believe in your packet, you have 2 letters that are going to a committee meeting on tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And that is the hearing on the water tower and the well field.
Okay.
And we have been advised to send letters of support.
Good.
Done so.
They're going out.
Who
Good.
do we have going into that?
We've actually been advised to not attend the hearing. I believe Mr. Massaro is going to attend the hearing.
He'll be the one.
Yep.
Selectmen's report. Pete?
I went to part of the Lyme disease study committee meeting, and Lyme disease, I guess that's what it's called. And they've started the hunting season. I think that I heard that they in the first week they culled 7 deer, I think,
Excellent.
Wow.
so that they're off to a very fast start.
What'd they get, 26 last year?
29 the last
29.
2 years. Each year they got 29, I think.
And how long does it go? Do you know how long does the?
I don't know how long it goes.
I think that goes till February or something.
Oh, okay.
I'll get the
No, that's all right.
schedule of deer hunting
Okay,
for
so-
next week,
But it's
yeah.
off to a good start then.
Yes,
potentially.
yeah.
It would seem like we're going to get a lot more deer this year if we
Yeah.
get 7 in a week.
Yeah.
The Energy Committee met, and they're looking forward to pushing to try to get the Green Communities Act adopted in town. They're also looking to do photovoltaic, and I guess they got Fred Davis got a grant for them, a technical assistance grant. They got $12,000 for bringing in an expert to look at 4 different sites in town for the photovoltaic. And their sites, I guess, were at the, I think at the wastewater treatment plant site, the, was it the
old
roof
dump.
of the,
The roof
old
of the
dump.
town garage, the old dump, and the fourth one, the state wouldn't approve because it had trees on it. They're trees that have grown up since we haven't been cutting it, and to my
that was
mind,
the
that's
site
the
in
best
behind
site.
Wheelock.
On the other side of the railroad tracks
Yeah.
behind Wheelock.
Okay,
Maybe it's the best site for it, but
It
yeah.
was the biggest site, so.
yes, it's,
I was interested because the earlier report from the Water and Sewer Committee members was that the company that approached them about putting something on that land had said that that site was feasible, but that the old dump wasn't big enough for their purposes, so that,
yeah. it
so I
depends on-
wondered whether other people would have the same attitude that,
Mm. Well, the old dump has problems because it isn't officially closed out, so.
Yeah.
um,
And how many more years is left on that?
I think about 7.
7?
The State Hospital Advisory Committee meeting was really about organizing the visioning statement, and they got that set. How does it work now? There's going to be a tour. Is it this coming? Well, Richard, you're leading it, so is it this coming Sunday?
Yes, at 2 o'clock.
Okay, and then the visioning statement, I guess, is in January 11, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think they've set a time.
Yeah.
And that's where they're inviting the townspeople in both of these dates, this coming Sunday and January 11. Well, this coming Sunday is to tour the hospital with Richard and Michael Taylor and John Thompson. And then on the 11th, it's to come to a visioning meeting that at a place to be determined, I guess, to brainstorm about ideas for the hospital site. What would the town like to see there? And as I understand it, part of what they're going to do is they're going to get information out to the town in advance of that so that people will come to the meeting prepared. Had 2 meetings with political people. Joe Kennedy was in town last Sunday, and I got a chance to say hello to him again. And I met the new person running for state rep, Sean Dooley, who I guess is the town clerk from Norfolk. And
Running for Hoosy's spot, yeah.
for Dan Winslow's seat. He told me that since he's the town clerk, he gets the signatures that get turned in, so he knew exactly who was running. Apparently, there are 3 people running. Another person from Norfolk and somebody from Walpole is running.
Okay.
And he seemed like a very interesting guy. He seemed very active, and so I don't know the other 2 people at all. And then I did have some office hours last Friday, and I had Tracy Buckley came to see me, and she has a yoga studio down on Park Street, and she and I talked about the possibility of putting a sign down there to direct people to the fact that there's a business district down there. I really think that we need that in some way, and I think that we need to figure out how to do it. We have, she pointed out to me that there was a sign for the Church of the Advent at Pleasant Street. I've noticed in the past that there's a sign for the funeral home on Mitchell Street. Small signs. I mean, and so I think we need to figure out what we can do. If it's I had emailed Mike and Mark about this, and Chris, I think, saying that if it's in the nature of a directional sign, almost like a street sign, I'm not quite sure why then it would be a violation of our zoning. Ideally, I'd like to see a kiosk there that would somehow be where people could not just announce the business district down there, but give people a chance to post some flyers about their lost dogs and things like that as well. I think that would make a very interesting thing. So, and that's it. Thank you.
Let me just comment with that, because I think a lot of the businesses on Park Street have a difficult time because the people going down 109 don't know they're
Correct.
there.
Right.
And we've
Right.
seen a number of turnovers that are down there. And I think whatever we do, it would be to our advantage to do something
I
to
agree.
get more visibility to that area so that those businesses will do well and stay in Medfield.
Yep.
So I agree. I'm not quite sure what, maybe we need just a brainstorm of what the bylaws and what we can do. I mean, a lot of communities have very nice-looking, signs that can direct,
Directions,
where
yeah.
businesses are. But I agree. I think we need to help those businesses out.
I think somebody needs to be studying what we're doing in the downtown. I know that there was the sidewalk committee and the aesthetics committee that was meeting, and I know that we've had a resignation from the downtown study committee, but I think that somehow we need a very active focus on the downtown, and I don't know who should be leading that, but we really need to make sure that somebody is leading that, and that there's, the cultural district people are looking into downtown, and I was fascinated when I jogged down here on Sunday to find that there are pictures all over this little pocket park now that have been pasted on the ground out there. It's fun to see that sort of activity. But I think there are other opportunities for that type of activity in the downtown, and I think we should be actively looking at that.
Maybe this would fit into downtown study.
I would think it would be great to have the downtown study committee look at it.
Yeah, well, ultimately, the sign bylaw is part of the zoning bylaw, so.
And if we need to change that, then we just need to figure out what we need to change and change it.
Right, but you'll need to meet with the planning board because they have to make a recommendation, they have to conduct a public hearing on any change and make a recommendation at town meeting. And they also appoint the sign advisory board, the planning board. So
Yeah, I think the
probably
site
you
advisory
should,
would have to be involved with that too. So.
yes.
Well, why don't I'll have a downtown study committee meeting called, Matt McCormick, who sits on the downtown study committee, is also on the sign advisory committee, so it would seem to make sense to have him involved.
And I think it might make sense to try to add some people to the downtown study committee. I think it really cries out for a retail merchant from the downtown. Well, I just think it would be good to get some more people thinking about the downtown.
All right.
So if anybody's interested in serving on the downtown study committee, they should let us know.
Richard?
I'm going to be more than 30 seconds. Mr.
You're gonna be
Chairman.
more than
May
30
want to
seconds?
make the budget committee, and then
Thought we had this time pretty
I'll bring the rear end up.
Okay, all right. All right, we've got everyone here, it looks like. Thank you all for coming, appreciate it. It's our annual kickoff to the budget cycle. We've got a couple of new faces. I know Superintendent of Schools, Jeff Morrison. Jeff, how are you? Thank you, nice to see you. Yeah, and we have our newest committee member for the warrant committee, Barbara Gibbs, which is Ann Thompson's daughter, in case you folks don't know. And Barbara's the only member, I think, for the warrant committee
Yes,
tonight, right? Yeah,
and the newest, so.
the newest, so.
And we were classmates at Medfield High School.
We were, yes. Yeah, so we've known each other quite a while, yes, just a little bit. So, Mike, how do you want to handle this? I know Gus has given kind of a,
Yes.
he's got a letter here.
Yeah, Gus emailed me his comments and asked if I would read them for him. He's away on business in Philadelphia tonight,
Okay.
so why don't I do that first? And then,
Okay.
as I've been reminded several times today, I get to give my gloom and doom speech, so. These are Gus Murby's comments. Experience over the past several years has taught me that it is virtually impossible to accurately predict at the start of the budget season all of the issues and factors that will ultimately influence where our town budget will come out. So the guidance you are getting this evening reflects our best thinking at the present time. My hope is that by explaining the thinking behind the guidance you're receiving tonight, that you will be able to apply the guidance thoughtfully and in a way that works for the benefit of the town and your departments. At the present time, it looks like Medfield's situation going into fiscal 15 will be similar to the situation we faced as we began the budget process last year. On the positive side, the interest rate climate is still benign. Cost growth in several important budget categories remains reasonably controlled, and the economy appears to be headed in a good direction, even if it's not headed there as rapidly as we might like. On the downside, from the standpoint of financial demand, the town is facing several long-term funding requirements, including funding for the new public safety building and a new water tower. In addition, we may be looking at purchasing the state hospital property, and we continue to work to fund long-term OPEB, and that's other post-employment benefit obligations. We also expect to be negotiating new labor contracts and are embarking on reviews of town department positions to evaluate their competitiveness in light of the current labor market conditions. In looking at all of these issues, addressing our long-term financing needs in particular, it is a high priority of the Warrant Committee in light of the current favorable interest rate environment. The following priorities are likely to heavily influence the Warrant Committee budget reviews over the coming months. 1. We do not anticipate a need to consider a Proposition 2.5 operating override for fiscal 15. We are not aware of any factors that should give rise to a need to consider an override. We also don't feel the taxpayers as a group are in a position to absorb the impact of an override on their individual tax burdens. 2. A top priority for the Warrant Committee in fiscal 15 will be to ensure that the town is in a position to be able to approve long-term funding for critical needs, like financing a new public safety building and possibly the purchase of the state hospital property. While funding for the construction of a new water tower on state hospital property will come out of the Water Enterprise Fund, the Warrant Committee recognizes that the burden of this funding still falls on taxpayers. We remain sensitive to the likelihood that a cumulative impact of this increased debt service could be significant, even after it is reduced by decreases in debt service for debt that is being retired. In a period when interest rates continue to be low, however, we believe it is prudent to be more aggressive in this area than might otherwise be the case in a more typical interest rate environment. So we anticipate that the town's debt level may increase in fiscal 15. 3. Another high priority for the Warrant Committee is to steer the town budget in a direction that will enable us to support Personnel Committee recommendations regarding town employee compensations. We have not forgotten the cooperation that the town's employees showed us in the lean years we faced a few years back. While we're not suggesting that you see extravagant increases in compensation in fiscal 15, the town continues to be committed to treating its employees fairly, and we plan to do our part to ensure that it is feasible for the town to do that without abusing the town's taxpayers in the process. 4. Somewhat related to the preceding point, one of the next most important priorities is to continue the town's efforts to make progress towards funding its long-term OPEB obligations. It's no fun having to spend money because it just goes into an account that provides funding at some point down the road to fund retiree health care and pension benefits. There is no immediate visible impact of the spending, but this is a responsibility that Medfield should and does take seriously. Even as the factors that determine the exact amount of this obligation fluctuate, we will do our best to chart a prudent course that keeps the town's obligations in mind, even as we work to minimize the disruption created by drawing funds off to meet this long-term obligation. 5. In the face of these important priorities, we recognize that we will have limited ability to support growth in the budgets of town departments and the school department in fiscal 15. In consulting with Mike Sullivan, we believe the town can support overall growth in these budgets of approximately 2.5%. In order to be able to support growth greater than this in any particular department, we will need other departments to come in below this level. We recognize that this is fairly austere guidance for fiscal 15, and we hope that in light of other priorities just described, that you can see why the tight guidance is necessary. One further request we have for you during this year's budget cycle is to consider how your department might like to use the state hospital property in furtherance of your department's assigned responsibilities. The State Hospital Reuse Committee has identified the town departments as one of the stakeholder constituencies that should have inputs into the process of figuring out how the town could best use hospital property. While it isn't appropriate to expect every town department to have a use for the hospital property, it's possible that several departments do have creative ideas that should be considered. If an article to buy the state hospital property is presented at our annual town meeting next April, your ideas about how the town and your department in particular could use that property to benefit the townspeople could be an important consideration for taxpayers as they consider the question of whether or not they want the town to buy the property. This year, the Warrant Committee is entering into a budget cycle with a full complement of members. We will be working to develop our planned schedule for budget reviews earlier in the process than was the case last year, so you have more advance notice of when we would like to talk to you. If you have any specific preferences around timing, please let me or your designated Warrant Committee contact know, and we will do our best to accommodate your preferences. We're looking forward to working with you again this year to get an FY15 budget that enables you to do a good job of the things you are trying to do in each of your departments, even as we meet the long-term capital needs of the town and strive to keep the burden on taxpayers reasonable. Thanks in advance for your help in ensuring that this budgeting cycle is a successful one. Gus Murby, Chairman of the Warrant Committee.
Good.
Okay. For the next thing, there are sheets down the back. I don't know if you've all gotten a copy of them. And usually I just give one sheet, but in responding to a couple of complaints I've had in recent years, the first thing I tried to do was to make the print a little bit larger. So I put the tax rate estimate on two sheets. The first sheet is the revenue side, and I've gone back to fiscal '09, and fiscal 14, the tax rate is not quite set yet. We expect that to be set within the next couple of weeks, but it's not quite there. In fact, I believe the selectmen are having a classification hearing on the 27th, is it, Evelyn?
26th.
26th, okay. And then after that, the assessors usually set the tax rate. Fiscal 15, I've made my first projection in the last column. As I said, the first sheet is the revenues, and the second sheet are the expenditures. Okay. And down at the bottom is the balance that we need at this point to take from free cash to finance the deficit between expenditures and revenues. I'll go over that in a second, but the other question I've had in past years is, well, what do all these figures mean? How do I know what's in local receipts, and how do I know what's in available funds, and how's the tax levy limit set? So I tried to attach sheets to the back that give you a breakdown. The third sheet is how the assessors calculate the levy limit. This one is for fiscal 14 because they're still working on the fiscal 14 tax rate, but it gives you an idea of how it's done. You take the prior year levy limit, you take 2.5% of that, and that gives you roughly, for fiscal 12, it was $803,000. For fiscal 13, if you go down to part 2, it's $830,000. Yep. You take new growth from new houses, renovations, new land subdivision, and that, since it has not been prior taxed on a prior year, is excluded from the calculation of the levy limit, and you can add that to your tax base. So for fiscal 2013, it was $281,000. For fiscal 14, it was just certified at $340,936. You add those together, and that gives you your levy limit. And then on top of that, any debt exclusions that have been voted to be excluded from the levy limit calculation are added onto that. And there's another sheet here that tells you what those amounts are. In fact, that's the next page. If you look to the next page and go down the bottom, you'll see the calculation of the fiscal 15 debt exclusion. You start out with all the projects that the bond service have been voted by the taxpayers to be excluded from Proposition 2.5. Okay. And because we don't have the figures on Redgate Farm yet, that's too recent, that is not in there. It won't be much for this year because it will just be a temporary interest payment. So I've calculated through the end of this year on all the debt that's outstanding. The total principal and interest is $4,534,145. So $4 million, if you think of that as your mortgage payment, The voters have voted to exclude $4.5 million from the Proposition 2.5 levy limit, and that's added to the levy limit when the tax rate is calculated. The breakdown of that I've given below is principal and interest, so it's 3.4 million principal and 1.1 million interest, roughly. The way the law works, there are certain exclusions from that amount, so you don't get to add the whole amount to the levy limit. You exclude any reimbursements from School Building Assistance Authority that are voted from the School Building Assistance Authority as reimbursements to the town. So there's a final year reimbursement next year on the 92 high school project for fiscal 16. That will disappear. There's also, if you go down the bottom, there's $1,208,000 for the 3 high school renovation projects. That was around $299,000, $2,000, I think that was voted. Also, we received bond premiums on several of those projects. The bond premiums and any interest on the bonds at the time of the bond sale is excluded from the levy, from the debt exclusion amount. So you start out with $4.5 million in debt exclusions, and your total reductions to that are $1.6 million. So that gives you, for next year, $2,919,000 as your net debt exclusion amount that's added to your levy limit. Okay, it's a little confusing, but if you go home tonight, study it, and you get out of here, you'll get it all figured out. The next sheet is local receipts, and that's one of the columns you'll see on the revenue side that we have, and the figure we're using for next year is $3,630,800. And I've given a breakdown of the major components. As you can see, the major part of it is motor vehicle excise. Of that $3,600,000, $1,008,000 is for motor vehicle excise tax. We get about $275,000 in rentals, and I've gotten the things that we collect rent on in the town. Departmental revenue, licenses and permits, special assessment sets for sewer betterment assessments, fines and forfeits, investment income, which used to be $800,000 during the height of the high interest rate period, now is down to $24,000, which makes Georgia Calivas cry. And cemetery fees, transfer station stickers, all those things add up to $3,600,000. And then I put together a guesstimate on what articles, and this is very preliminary at this point, what articles we might have at the town meeting next year. And I just plugged the figure in for into some of the totals on the appropriation side. And then the last 2 sheets are the debt by purpose, as if, and they, again, does not include Redgate Farm purchase, but it does include the town garage. And so this is printed every year in your warrant report, but I've updated it through the end of this year so you can have an idea of what our total debt outstanding. And remember, some of this debt is covered by other sources than the property tax. You've got school building assistance that covers quite a bit of your school debt outstanding. You've got the sewer betterment revenue covers just about all of the sewer debt projects. Your water and sewer enterprise fund are covered by your water and sewer rates. So when you net those out, our debt has gone down quite a lot. It's really under control at this point. And as you can see at the end, it's totaled both as to outstanding principal and interest. Okay, if you want to go back to the front two sheets, what are my assumptions? You can see the levy limit from the prior year, the debt exclusion, net debt exclusion that we explained how it's calculated, the new growth, that's 2.5% of your prior year's levy limit, an estimate for, your 2.5% levy increase. Your new growth, we estimate that conservatively because we have no idea what it's going to be, and it's better to have extra at the end than to be short. So we're using $250,000 for that, which actually is above what it was for fiscal 10, 11, and 12. It's only been the last couple of years that we've actually exceeded that, so it's better to be safe than sorry on that one. So that gives you $38,423,000 for property tax revenue. And then the other items that we just discussed are broken down for you. Enterprise fund revenues and revolving accounts. The revolving accounts, actually, we don't appropriate. That's money that departments collect that they're allowed to use by vote of town meeting each year. There's about $224,000. That's the library revolving account. It's the community garden revolving account. It's the ambulance mileage revenue account. It's the advanced life support revolving account. So there's a whole bunch of those that are voted at the beginning of town meeting as part of the consent calendar. The enterprise fund revenue, that covers not only the water and sewer budgets, it covers the water and sewer debt, and it covers some other items. For example, it covers part of the accountant and the treasurer collectors and the town administrator's salary. It covers part of the public works director's salary because he's also water superintendent, sewer superintendent. So all those things, when you add up to balance the enterprise fund budgets, are added into the total water and sewer budgets and come out to $3.1 million. Those amounts that you raised in revenue, plus whatever you vote from free cash at the end of town meeting, have to equal your total expenditures so you have a balanced budget. And the next page is the expenditure side. We've got the fixed expenditures. I'm estimating $100,000 for snow deficit this year. I have no idea where that's going to end up. You can see what's happened in past years. It's all over the ballpark. We actually had a higher deficit fiscal 14, but we received about $66,000 in FEMA funds for the one of the snowstorms, I think the October snowstorm. So that reduced that from $167,000, I think it was originally, or $173,000, something like that. Overlay for tax abatements. Not all taxes are collected. There are abatements given for widows, veterans, blind, elderly, and those have to be paid out of somewhere because they're not appropriated at town meeting. The assessors set up an account called overlay. That overlay reduces, is when there's an abatement given, that abatement is charged to that overlay account. And then we have cherry sheet offsets and cherry sheet assessments. The main cherry sheet assessments for the MBTA, that's about $250,000 that Medfield has assessed as its share of the MBTA deficit. The other big one is Norfolk County government, that's about $100,000. And also Norfolk County Mosquito Control, which is not part of Norfolk County, it's a separate agency. That's been going up because of the prevalence of equine encephalitis and West Nile virus. So they've been doing a lot more spraying, and that budget's been jumping up. The revolving funds we discussed previously, that's the opposite side to the revenue side, is offset by the expenditure side. Capital budget and other articles, we usually set aside around $500,000 for tax levy funds for the capital budget, and then any other items. And there's an article summary of those in the material in the back. Employee benefits, that's mainly for health, life insurance, workers' comp insurance, property and casualty insurance, and all the insurances. And then the Norfolk County pension assessments. School budget, the town, the vocational school budget, the town budgets, and the enterprise fund budget. So they add up to $48 million for the current year, and we're projecting $49 million, about a $1.1 million increase for the following year. The factors I'm using there, I'm using an assumption of an 8% increase for pension and health insurance. In the past years, we've started out with 10% We've been lucky. I think last year our pension cost came in at 4.9%. Our health insurance came in about 1.72%. But sooner or later, we're going to get hit. We know Georgia went to a pension meeting, and they're telling us to expect a 10% increase in the Norfolk County retirement assessment this year. The health insurance, we don't know the effect of the national health insurance program. And we've also had 2 years of very low rate increases, 0% 2 years ago, 1.72% the current year. So we're putting 8% in. When we get those new prices, if they are in fact lower, we will reduce the budget request, and there will be some savings there. On the other hand, they may come in higher than that, and we may have to increase that amount. It's just a guesstimate at this point. For the town and school budgets and the enterprise fund budgets, we're using a 2.5% increase in those budgets, as the chairman of the warrant committee mentioned in his remarks. Then the debt. The debt is broken down into 3 categories. A debt that has not been voted excluded by the town, by the voters of the town. That's a dwindling amount, because most of our debt now, as time goes by, is voted as a debt exclusion. The second category is excluded debt, which we talked about earlier, and you have the breakdown of that in the back. And then the enterprise fund debt that's covered as part of the enterprise fund, the water and sewer enterprise fund. That $636,000 is part of the $3.1 million in revenue raised on the first page. So you come out with a total of expenditures of $55,773,000. On the front page, you have total revenues of $55,680,000, and the difference, or the deficit at this point, is $93,000. So there is a little leeway there, because normally we take $500,000 out of free cash. I see the town accountant sitting in the back, and free cash has not yet been certified. We expect that, next month, Joy? To be certified, and we're hoping that it will stay somewhere in the upper teens, lower 20s, 1.7 million and 2.2 million range, but we don't know that yet. And the tax rate for this year hasn't been set. As you can see, between fiscal 12 and fiscal 13, the tax rate was level, no change at all. We do expect probably about a 3% increase this year, and part because we did have some unused levy from the tax levy from the prior year that was used, and in part because the debt service for the capital for the town garage is included in this, so that pushed up the debt exclusion amount a bit. That's about it. If you have any questions on it as to where we stand, but basically we're looking at an 8% increase for pensions and health insurance, and a 2.5% increase for departmental budgets. And then we'll see where it goes as time goes along. We always start out on the conservative side. If we get good news in terms of state aid, if state aid goes up, right now we're projecting level funding. If that goes up, we'll take that into account. If our articles come in less than we anticipate, special articles, then we'll take that into account. If our health insurance rate increases or pension rate increases come in less than we projected, we'll take that into account. But that's where we are right now.
Good. All right. Trying to think if there's anything else. That's pretty much it, I think, as far as covering this stuff.
Unless anybody has some questions. I don't know if you want to go around and...
I just want to add that fiscal year 15 is a 26 pay period year. Fiscal year 16 will be 27 pay periods.
Okay.
So, things are-
And that affects people differently. Hourly people will get 27 times their 27 paychecks, so they will actually get more money in a 27 pay period.
Yeah.
the salary people, you take their annual salary and divide it by 27 instead of 26, so it appears as if their salary is going down. It just depends on how it's calculated. It has an impact on the budgets. When I talked to Gus Murphy about that, suggested that we try to space it out over 2 years. I've talked to Joy about that to figure out what the cost of that will be, the additional cost for the 27 pay period for hourly employees, and maybe take half of that amount and appropriate that to the stabilization fund next year, and then take it out the following year. So you're spreading the cost over 2 years instead of 1 year.
Okay,
But that remains to be seen.
Did you have any, Scott? You're all set, right? Okay, good. Any other thoughts with anyone? Anyone, questions? No? Good, okay.
And I think most of the people are familiar. I don't know whether you want to go around and do a quick intro, or
Yeah,
if that
if you
would be
want to take a
helpful.
minute maybe and just, we'll go around the room, people can just introduce themselves again. We'll be real quick, and then you folks can go. But that'd be great. So Barbara, if you want to start, just introduce yourself. Yeah,
Brand new on the warrant committee, I haven't even been to a meeting yet.
yeah, there we go, good, yeah,
Scott McDermott, town moderator.
Yeah.
Bill Harvey, water and sewer board.
excellent, good, yeah. Anyone guess? Sarah, yeah,
Sarah Raposa, town planner.
yeah.
Rob Gray.
Georgia Kalikas, treasurer, tax collector.
Ken Feeney, Superintendent of Public Works.
Bob Kennedy, Highway Department.
Good.
John Knapp, Building Commissioner.
Dorothy Trudeau, town accountant. Roberta Lynch, council on aging.
Yeah,
Charlie Tillman, Director of Finance and Operations for the School Department.
Yeah.
Bill Kingsby, Fire Chief.
Yeah.
Bill Olivia, Water and Sewer Board.
yeah, thanks.
Bob Amy, Police Chief.
Yeah, we go, they're all set there, good, Jim, yeah. All right. Got Jim, yeah, set.
Carol, yeah.
Carol?
Carol.
Hi, Carol. Yeah,
Jim Steiner, Director of Parks and Recreation.
yeah,
Jeff Marsden, Superintendent of Schools.
yeah, well, yeah.
Frank Perry, Board of Assessors.
Yeah.
Ed Beard, Assessor.
Right, good, excellent. Thanks for coming, particularly the group that likes to hide in the back every year. You understand, it's like the select group, as close to the elevator as possible. Yeah.
It's like being back in high school.
Yeah,
Just sit
yeah.
down the back of the classroom.
Right. All right, thanks so much, everyone, for coming, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a selectmen's report. I did meet with Ken Feeney, Bob Kennedy, Ed Hinckley, Sarah Raposa, and representatives with Roach Brothers, with the idea that once their construction begins, to look at how they can work with the aesthetics committee of the a sidewalk in front of their store. The aesthetics committee is looking to make a proposal to the planning board of a plan that would have a cement sidewalk, but with a brick border that would look similar to what we have along Town Street.
Yep.
And to see if Roach Brothers would be willing to undertake that project. And they seemed very agreeable. They wanted to see what costs would be, and they left that Ken Feeney and Bob Kennedy would get some prices. And I actually just came from the Aesthetics Committee meeting before this, and Bob Kennedy actually had some figures on that. And they plan to go to the planning board meeting, the next planning board meeting, which I believe is November 18th, present that to the planning board, and then turn that over to Roach Brothers and see what Roach Brothers can do with that, if this is the time would be right to make any change when they actually do the work. So just kudos to the Aesthetics Committee on that work. I also met with the representatives of NSTAR, Verizon, Comcast. Mike and Christine were there. I gave them the list that I had of the 104 double poles, and it was interesting, on their computer data bank, they only had 34 of those double poles listed. And so the first effort was to update those poles. The process was interesting. There's a series of wires that are on all these poles. Number one that has to be removed actually would be the town. And we only had one telephone pole that the school in the town wire that has for
Fiber optic.
the fiber optic.
Yeah.
It was one pole here on Main Street. The other 103 poles, there was no no town interference with that. So then it goes to N-Star that has to remove their wires. All the N-Star wires have been removed. Now it's in the ballpark of Comcast.
Okay.
Once Comcast does, then it would go to Verizon, then all the wires be off, then it goes back to N-Star, who actually removes the poles.
Okay,
So
good.
they've begun to update that computer data bank. We're going to meet on a monthly basis. They're going to continue to work on that until all the wires and all the double poles are removed. So I was very
It's great.
upbeat with that. I attended the planning board meeting last night. One was the issue of Roach Brothers, very similar to the proposal that they gave us. The other is the issue of the Cock Tavern. The Leonard family here in Medfield, local family, has purchased that. They hope to open a B&B and a tavern in there. There was a lot of discussion on one side. It is one of the oldest homes dating to 1740. It has a lot of history with that. And he stressed that, this is not going to be a 20-something sports bar, but this is a family tavern in a historic setting, like a Sherburne Inn or a Wayside Inn type of a setting that would be there. He's looking for 5 rooms in the B&B part. The zoning actually would be what our town council actually drafted a number of years ago, just for this reason, as we have historic homes that there's no way one person would be able to afford to repair, do the repairs and keep that up. And so this was a way to help protect the older homes. It's been used a couple of other times of people that have been able to have other tenants that have been in there. The neighbors raised some legitimate concerns dealing with parking, traffic, buffer zones. The planning board heard all that information. They're going to continue with their meeting in November. And it was interesting today, I toured we have 2 Chinese teachers that are visiting the school. They've been here for about 3 weeks. They'll be here another week. And I went down to I took them all around town, but I took them into the senior center, the center down on Ice House Road, and Roberta Lynch did an excellent job touring them through. But it's interesting, and it was interesting for me as well. They're serving about 80 seniors a day in a variety of capacities down there, and somewhere between 900 and 1,000 different seniors over the course of a year, and that has grown. We just talk about budgets, and her staff, it's increased hours, and I'm just very impressed with all the work and what goes on in that senior center. Let's see, the other thing, Mr. Chairman, and I think I was in error, and I'll take a step back, in looking of, we've established a number of committees as the Board of Selectmen, and my thinking is, I think our first step, in my opinion, should be to try to steer that into an existing committee that's already there, so that we're not taking away from an existing committee. So, for example, we established, which was my motion, on the Meeting House Pond, but that property actually is under Park and Recreation Commission. And it'd probably be my feeling that that should be Park and Rec that actually has this subcommittee. We have a subcommittee in place, but really that should answer, I believe, because they own the property, to Park and Rec. And then they can
Flow
come
through
back.
them, yeah.
And same with the Downtown Study Committee. To do over, I think, there's excellent ideas that have come forward to try to get a lot of town input into what's going to go on in the Pocket Park, so-called, that's there. And I think that is going to go well, and that committee should continue as it is. But perhaps, in hindsight, that would have been better if they then reported to the Downtown Study Committee and then came back to us as a Board of Selectmen, so that we're not overstepping another committee's responsibility with that. I was also glad to see that the Conservation Commission had an article that they're opening up for additional people to get involved into our open space committee. I'd love to see a town-wide plan that we take all the open space that we have, and a lot of people don't realize how much open space that we do have, put that on so it's on one map, people can see that, put it on the website, begin a program that we can mark the trails, provide for parking, and not just the town, but let's work together with the trustees of reservation and the other people that have open space in the town, and make one plan that's going to be for the benefit of the whole town. And then the last two things, if we could put on our agenda, because we've gone through about half the year, just to put our goals back, we can re-look at our goals to see how we're doing with those.
Sure.
And I know we've asked Mark to take a look at the bylaws, especially those with the hospital, and I know you wanted to come for some clarification, so if we can get Mark maybe to handle that. And that's all, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I just got a couple quick things. It was kind of nice when I was on vacation the last couple of weeks. I actually was able to get to a couple of the weekly progress meetings for the town garage, the DPW building on Tuesday mornings and stuff like that. And it was great to sit in. I really enjoyed those meetings. It's great to sit in to see how things are going, and people should rest assured that the town is really paying very much close attention to how that's going. And if you haven't had a chance to check the property out, you should try to drive down there perhaps on a weekend and stuff when the equipment isn't there and the buildings are going, the walls are going up. It's going to be a very, very nice facility when it's done. So I have to give a lot of credit to the committee and everything. I think they've done a terrific job so far of really managing a very difficult project. So it's looking really good. On October 17th, on Thursday, I had hosted one of our selectmen, their mini town halls with the residents out down on Noon Hill area of town at the Sweeney's home. I had a great time. There's about 12, 14 people there or so at the house, and went over a number of issues and forwarding their comments onto the appropriate department heads to resolve, but typical type things that we'd expect to see from different neighborhoods. Obviously, they're very concerned about beaver dams and stuff down there and how they affect the Stop River, and also traffic issues, as a lot of us do in some parts of town, not only on South Street Extension, but also on Noon Hill Road. And then also just those were kind of the two biggest things I think that they were kind of covered there, safety issues and the beavers and stuff. But we had a great time, 2.5 hours or so, so we had a very nice conversation with the folks who were very well attended. They had some great ideas and some great topics for us to bring up. So I'll be following up with the various department heads, see if they can kind of resolve some of those issues for those folks.
That was nice of you to take a vacation from your paying job
Yeah,
so that you could
do that. I know.
volunteer
For
on your
that, yeah.
non-paying job.
Yeah, and I guess coming up, we've got a couple things coming up. This Thursday is First Thursday again, Zulo Gallery, my monthly plug for that, so please show up and support them. And then I guess we've got a Veterans Breakfast, I believe, that will be showing up for on Veterans Day, as far as I know, on the 11th, which is this coming Monday, at the center. Mike, you're cooking? Is that what I heard?
One of the cooks.
You're one of the cooks, so you're cooking our breakfast for us?
Cook, the
All right.
pancake.
Excellent.
So,
Yeah, and I've got a note here, too. I think that Representative Congressman Kennedy is going to attend, too, so along with, I assume, our reps and stuff, so we're going to be quite a crew.
He's spending a lot of time in town. huh?
Yeah, so that's really great.
Mr.
yeah,
Chairman, I just
yes.
want to correct, I double-checked when we had that little break there.
Yes.
Personnel board appointment is actually the chairman of the warrant committee, chairman of the board of selectmen, and the moderator.
Oh, okay, it's one of those
Yeah,
triple
it's
things.
three.
that get
It's the
us-
chairman
yes.
of each, and the
Okay,
chairman of the
okay.
two, and then the moderator.
Okay, good, excellent, all right. Mike, any informational things before we move on to executive session? I don't know if we-
I don't think so.
Okay. Okay, all right.
Turn myself out with all that. reading.
Yeah, that's like I thought, yeah, all right. I guess, Pete, you got to go through the
I would
motion.
move that we go into executive session and not reopen in public session.
Yes.
Need a declaration from the chair.
I move that the chair declare that,
Yeah,
You need to, here's the script.
all right.
You don't have it.
I always lose it.
It's the two for real estate
Which
acquisition,
one?
Kenny property, and
Oh,
traffic
okay.
mitigation.
Okay, all right. So my declaration is the Board of Selectmen needs to meet in executive session for the following purposes: to discuss strategy with respect to litigation. I declare that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body. Number 2, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. I declare that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiation position of the public body. And like I said, the open session will not reconvene at the conclusion of the executive session.
And I move that the Medfield Board of Selectmen go into executive session for the following purposes: to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigation position of the public body and the chair so declares; to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body and the chair so declares; and that the open session not reconvene at the conclusion of the executive session. Mr. DeSorga.
Aye.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson, yes.
Excellent.
This program was made possible through the generous support of your Medfield friends and neighbors, folks just like you. And thanks for watching.